Normally, when we talk of the Hoysala temples, the only temples which come to our mind are the Hoysaleshwara Temple at Halebedu or the Chennakeshwar Temple at Belur. However, the Hoysala kings made hundreds and thousands of temples spread all across Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and many other states. Many of the temples have not survived. It has been our endeavor to cover the lesser known temples in India, since most of the famous temples are already covered in detail by many people. Accordingly, we have been going to different remote places in various parts of India in search of temples which are not yet in public domain. In this regard, we were in Hassan district in the state of Karnataka, wherein some of our colleagues told us about a place called Mosale. Nobody had heard the name of Mosale, a very small village around 10 kilometers south of the Hassan city. We took our Royal Enfield and decided to move on the bike and visit this temple. There were no signages on the way, and very few people were aware of the existence of this temple. This place called Mosale is a small village around 10 kilometers south of the Hassan city in the Hassan district, Karnataka. As we can see, Mosale is a very small village with typical village houses still made up of mud and bricks. This is the path in the village which leads to this twin temple complex called the Nageshvara Temple and the Chennakeshwar Temple. Very few people were aware of the existence of this temple. There was also a language issue because in this part of Karnataka, very few people understand Hindi. But somehow, combination with the Google map and asking directions from the people nearby, we were finally able to reach this grand and old temple. This area is surrounded by a wall and a boundary has been made, and this whole temple complex is on a raised platform which is around 1.5 meters higher than the normal ground. As we enter the main gate, we find a twin temple complex. On the north is the Nageshwara Temple dedicated to Lord Shiva, and on the right we have the Chennakeshwar Temple dedicated to Lord Vishnu. These temples look almost unique, and as we can see at the top of the temple Shikhara, we can find a very beautifully carved pot which is made up of stone. This area is surrounded by a boundary wall, and because of which this area is comparatively safe. However, very few people are aware about the presence of this temple. That is why we decided to cover this temple. Mosale is a sleepy village, a very small village in the Hassan district, around 10 kilometers from Hassan city, and this is the view of the entrance of the Nageshwara Temple. This is the side view of the Nageshwara Temple, and as we can see, it is a very beautifully carved temple from the Jagati till all the panels have been very beautifully made. There are multiple mini edicules made on the walls as well as on the pilasters. This is another view of the same temple taken from another corner. The surrounding is very serene, huge big trees can be seen. However, very few people are aware about the existence of this temple, and even fewer people visit this place. We shall be now entering the Nageshwara Temple. As we can see, there are few steps which take us to the outer mandap, when we find two platforms on the left and the right. There are two dwarpalas at the bottom. The door portal is very beautifully carved. This is the top of the door portal, wherein we find Lord Shiva and Lord Parvati along with their attendant. When we look above, these carvings on the ceiling of this mandap is very intricate and very beautiful. These carvings will remind us of the various intricate carvings at the Chennakeshwar Temple at Belur and the Hoysaleshwara Temple at Halebedu. Such detailed carvings on the roof of the temples are very rare, and these carvings are one of the best examples of carvings on the ceilings of any of these temples. What is mind-boggling is how the ancient people were able to create such a beautiful carving on the ceilings of the mandap, what tools they had used, how much time it took to create these beautiful structures. We can find the dancing form of Lord Shiva in his Nataraja form. And in the Antarala, we find Lord Nandi waiting for Lord Shiva in the Garbhagriha. At the top of the door portal, we find Lord Shiva and Parvati, and Lord Shiva can be seen holding a damru in his hand. Now we shall be moving around the temple and we'll have a look at the various iconographies made on the outer walls of this temple. The carvings here have damaged over a period of time because of the weathering condition and the type of rock which has been used. However, there is no sign of a systemic damage by a horde of army or horde of people. Here we find various devis and devtas which have been depicted very beautifully. However, some of the carvings have badly got damaged over a period of time. These carvings remind us of the various sculptures at the Chennakeshwar Temple. This is the entrance of the Chennakeshwar Temple, which is very similar to the Nageshvara Temple on the north side. When we came here, this door was locked. However, we went to the village searching for the keys for this temple, and finally we were able to find out the person having the keys. We requested that person to open the door, and he was kind enough to allow us to go inside. This is the roof ceiling of the Chennakeshwar Temple at Mosale, and here we find one of the most beautiful carvings possible which have ever been created by men on this earth. In this temple, here we find Lord Narasimha, a form of Lord Vishnu. It's a very beautifully carved sculpture of Lord Narasimha and is available in one of the niches inside the Antarala before we enter the Garbhagriha. Seated Narasimha reminds us of the Ugra Narasimha sculpture at Hampi. Like this mini shrine, there are many other mini shrines in this Antarala. And at the top we find various mini edicules which have been carved very beautiful. As is usually the case, the light available inside the Antarala or the Garbhagriha is very limited, and hence the quality of video may not be very appropriate. Here we find various scenes from the battles, horses, elephants, and various gods, deities, apsaras, nymphs, and celestial creatures. Similar to this Lord Narasimha, we also find many other smaller shrines in the Antarala. Now we will have a look at the ceiling of the Antarala. Here again, just like the beautiful sculptures made on the ceiling of the outer mandap, here again we find very beautiful carving of various gods and goddesses and many geometrical and floral patterns on the ceiling of the Antarala of the Chennakeshwar Temple at Mosale. We can find a lotus type flower which has been formed and gives grace and beauty to this temple. This is another minor shrine inside the Antarala where we find Lord Vishnu with his wife, and we can find a chakra in the right hand of Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu's spouse is shown sitting on his left thigh. On the left hand, Lord Vishnu is holding a conch or a shank. At the bottom, we find an attendant praying to Lord Vishnu. The ornamentation and the embellishments of both the gods and goddesses is very, very beautiful and intricate. Here again we find one more ceiling, very beautifully carved sculpture on the ceiling and very different one. All these beautiful ceilings remind us of the sculptures and the geometrical patterns at the Somnathpura temple which we have covered in detail. There is one more shrine here in the Chennakeshwar Temple at Mosale. Here in this smaller shrine in the Antarala, we find a very beautifully carved image of Lord Ganesha. Here again a very beautiful deity has been made, a female goddess with very beautiful ornamentation and two attendants which are waiting for her. This is another image in the inner shrine. However, due to lack of light, adequate light, we are not able to bring the beauty of the sculptures to you appropriately. These carvings are on the outer wall of the Chennakeshwar Temple at Mosale. Most of the sculptures are in a damaged condition. However, we can definitely visualize the beauty of these images when this temple would have been initially constructed. On the outer walls of this temple, we found large number of images of Garuda, the mythical bird, which is the Now we shall be having a look at the various sculptures made at the outer wall of this temple. In this temple, we find Garuda, the mythical bird, wherein he is shown in the form of a human being. However, his wings can be very clearly seen. The nose is made like a beak, and this Garuda is made very beautifully. These carvings are on the outer wall of the Chennakeshwar Temple at Mosale. Most of the sculptures are in a damaged condition. However, we can definitely visualize the beauty of these images when this temple would have been initially constructed. On the outer walls of this temple, we found large number of images of Garuda.